The vastness of space stretched endlessly before Captain Lila Chase as she stared out the viewport of the horizon. A single human ship, traveling among a galaxy full of powerful and ancient alien civilizations. Earth had only recently begun to spread its wings in the cosmos, and it was still seen as a joke to the rest of the universe. The Andronis Dominion, a powerful alien empire known for its massive, nearly invincible fleet, ruled the galactic core with an iron fist. They were the ones who decided who would rise and who would fall in the galaxy. But now the Andronis were about to make a fatal mistake. The Horizon wasn't a warship. It wasn't even particularly big, but it was one of the most advanced ships Earth had ever built. It was swift, cunning, and equipped with some of the most sophisticated technology that even the Andronis hadn't expected. They had made the mistake of underestimating humanity, and Captain Chase knew that it was time to teach them otherwise. The Horizon was on a mission to defend a small human colony on the edge of Andronis space. The colony was a thriving community, peaceful and full of life, a symbol of Earth's determination to establish itself among the stars. Yet it was also in the most dangerous part of space, right next to Andronis-controlled territories, and it was here, at this very spot, that the Andronis had chosen to strike. "Captain, we've received their fleet's coordinates," said Commander Eric Connors, a tall man with sharp eyes who served as the Horizon's second-in-command. "They're moving in fast." Lila turned away from the viewport. The tension in the room was palpable. The crew of the Horizon wasn't naive. They knew the odds were against them. The Andronis fleet was large, massive in fact, an entire armada that could crush them in an instant if they so desired. Yet here they were, a single human ship standing in their way. The odds were slim, but Lila had always believed in one thing. When humans are backed into a corner, they become more dangerous than anyone could imagine. "Prepare the crew. Let's give them a fight they'll never forget," Captain Chase said with determination in her voice. There was no fear in her eyes, only focus. Her crew believed in her, and that was enough. The Andronis were not known for their compassion. To them, every alien species in the galaxy was just another obstacle to their dominance. Humans were the newest addition to the galactic map, and the Andronis had never considered them a serious threat. Earth's fleet was small, barely a match for the mighty forces of the Dominion. The Andronis had dealt with countless civilizations before. Each one had bowed down before their power, or worse, been destroyed. The Andronis fleet was led by Admiral Vorath, a towering alien with sharp, angular features and cold, calculating eyes. His race, the Andronis, were known for their ruthless efficiency and their immense strength in combat. The Horizon was little more than a speck compared to the colossal warships that the Andronis commanded. To Admiral Vorath, the situation was clear. This human ship would be a simple inconvenience, a nuisance that would be crushed under the weight of his armada. "Bring their ship into view," Vorath ordered, his voice steady and confident. One of his officers, a young alien with bright red skin, nodded. "Yes, Admiral. The human ship is approaching. The fleet is ready to engage." Vorath looked out across the bridge, his fingers clasped behind his back. "Let them come. They won't survive long." Back on the Horizon, Captain Chase was preparing for battle. She had no illusions about the Andronis fleet's power, but she also knew something that the Andronis didn't. Humans had a unique ability to adapt, to find solutions when there seemed to be none. While the Andronis were focused on their overwhelming might, humans had been quietly developing new technologies, weapons, and strategies that could turn the tide of battle. "We can't fight them head-on," Commander Connors said as he looked over the enemy fleet's configuration on the holographic display. "Not with those numbers. We'll be swarmed." Lila nodded, her fingers tapping thoughtfully on the armrest of her chair. "We don't need to fight them head-on. We need to make them question their assumptions. If they think we're weak, we'll use that against them." A small, knowing smile crept onto Lila's face. The Andronis might be strong, but they had one weakness: arrogance. They believed they were unbeatable, and they believed the humans were nothing more than pests. This was their fatal flaw. The crew moved quickly, activating the Horizon's advanced stealth and cloaking systems. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to give them the edge they needed. Lila glanced at the screen, where the Andronis fleet was now visible. The massive ships loomed in the distance, their sleek, menacing forms filling the view. "Shields up. All systems ready?" Lila ordered. "Engaging cloaking device," Commander Connors replied. The horizon shimmered as its cloaking systems activated, rendering it almost invisible to the Androni's ships. From the outside, it looked like any other ship in the vastness of space. But inside, the horizon was a marvel of human engineering. Lila's heart raced as she gave the order to move. Admiral Vorath was confident even as the human ship seemed to vanish from his scanners. "Let them hide. We know they cannot escape," he sneered. "Deploy the fleet in formation. We'll sweep them from the skies." What the Admiral didn't realize was that the horizon wasn't running. It was preparing to strike. The horizon reappeared, cloaking deactivated just long enough to fire a salvo of high-powered EMP missiles. The missiles hit their targets with precision, disabling a few of the smaller ships in the Andronis fleet. The Andronis were caught off guard as their systems briefly shut down. Vorath's eyes widened as the chaos spread across the fleet. "What is this? How did they do that?" "Impossible," one of his officers muttered, his voice laced with disbelief. "They've hacked our systems," Lila smiled grimly. It was a simple tactic, but one that had never been used on the Andronis before. By using the Horizon's advanced hacking tools, they had cracked the Andronis' communication network, sending them into disarray. The fleet was losing control, their ships randomly shutting down or malfunctioning. Lila's voice rang out through the comms. "This is your first and final warning, Andronis. Leave now, or we'll show you what humans can do." The Andronis, however, weren't the type to retreat, especially not with their pride at stake. They quickly scrambled to restore their systems and regrouped. But the damage had already been done. The human ship had disrupted their carefully laid plans, and now they were struggling to maintain control. Admiral Vorath clenched his fists. His fleet was faltering. His reputation was at risk. He couldn't let a human ship, one ship, embarrass him in front of his commanders. "Prepare for retaliation," he growled, his tone dripping with menace. "We will crush them." He didn't realize that with every passing moment, the Horizon was learning more about his fleet. It was adapting. The Andronis were used to predictable tactics, and humans? They were anything but predictable. Lila stood in front of her crew, determination written across her face. "Keep them on the defensive. We've got this." As the Andronis began to reassemble their forces, the Horizon vanished into the darkness once more. But this time, Captain Chase wasn't about to let them regain control. This was just the beginning, and the Andronis would soon learn. Underestimating humanity had been their biggest mistake. Admiral Vorath paced back and forth on the bridge of his flagship, the Talon's fury, his anger boiling. The human ship, the Horizon, had managed to disable several of his smaller ships with a single, unexpected strike. It was embarrassing. The Andronis were known for their military might, their technological superiority. They were supposed to be the ones who commanded fear, not the other way around. "Admiral, the human ship is gone," one of his officers reported, his voice trembling slightly. "It's cloaked again, we can't detect it." Vorath's eyes narrowed. "They think they can run? Let them hide for now. We'll find them." But even as he said the words, a nagging sense of unease settled in his stomach. The Horizon wasn't running. It was waiting. It was watching. It was learning. Meanwhile, aboard the Horizon, Captain Lila Chase stood confidently at the front of the bridge, watching her crew work with precision. The first strike had been successful, but the battle was far from over. The Andronis were not going to let a single human ship embarrass them. She knew it wouldn't be long before they regrouped and came at them with everything they had. Her crew, all of them highly trained, was ready for whatever came next. They had come a long way from being dismissed as weak and insignificant. Now they had a chance to show the galaxy that humans could be more than just survivors. They could be conquerors too. "Captain," Commander Connors said, breaking her concentration. He was standing at the tactical station, his face tense. "The Andronis are reorganizing. It won't be long before they strike back. We need a new plan." Lila nodded, her mind working quickly. "They're going to come at us with everything. But they've made a mistake. They've underestimated us. The Horizon wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of human resilience. Every member of the crew knew the stakes. If they lost here, humanity would be seen as weak, vulnerable. But if they won, they would send a message that would resonate across the stars. The Andronis might have the numbers, but they didn't have the same drive that humanity had." Lila turned to the rest of her crew. "Get ready, everyone. This is where we make our stand." The Andronis fleet was not going to wait for long. Admiral Vorath had received word that the remaining ships in his fleet were ready to engage. He turned to his officers, his face hard. Prepare the fleet for a full assault. This time we show them no mercy. One of his officers, an alien with green reptilian skin, looked nervous. Admiral, the horizon is unlike anything we've faced before. We may not be ready for their next move. Vorath's cold eyes locked onto his officers. We are the Andronis Dominion. There is no ship in this galaxy that can defeat us. Send the fleet. The Talon's Fury and its accompanying ships turned as one, making their way toward the location where the horizon had last been seen. The Andronis fleet moved with the practiced precision of a seasoned military force. They were used to striking fear into their enemies, to wiping out entire fleets with little more than a wave of their hand. This would be no different, they thought, but as they neared, the horizon remained unseen. Lila's plan was simple but effective. She had activated the ship's cloaking system again, but this time they weren't just hiding. They were waiting, watching the Andronis fleet close in. The horizon was outmatched in sheer size and firepower, but what it lacked in size it made up for in speed, stealth, and most importantly, intelligence. Every crew member on board was ready to fight with everything they had. They had one chance to turn the tide of the war, and Lila wasn't about to let that slip away. Captain, we're reading multiple ships coming into range, Connors reported. His voice was steady, but there was a slight edge of nervousness. The Andronis fleet was massive, and they were closing in quickly. Lila glanced at the display, her eyes calculating. We can't take them head on. We need to strike where they're weakest. Sir, said Ensign Torres from the communication station, I've intercepted their communications. They're planning to make their move soon. They're getting more aggressive. Good, Lila replied, a small smile tugging at her lips. Let them make the first move. We'll be ready. The Andronis fleet drew closer, their ships looming ever larger on the sensors. Admiral Vorath watched, his hands clasped behind his back, his face set in a grim expression. He knew this was it, the final confrontation. This human ship had already caused them too much trouble. They couldn't let it get away again. Open fire, Vorath commanded. The Andronis ships, their weapons charged, fired a massive barrage toward the horizon. The shots lit up space like lightning, the energy blast cutting through the dark void. But the horizon wasn't there. Where did it go? Vorath demanded. It was too late. The horizon had already slipped back into the darkness, its cloaking device hiding it from view once again. And this time the Andronis fleet was disoriented. The horizon wasn't just hiding. It was moving, striking, and disappearing before they could react. Lila's voice echoed over the comms. You've made your move, Andronis. Now it's our turn. The horizon appeared out of nowhere, emerging from the cloak with a deadly accuracy. It fired a series of precision missiles, aimed directly at the weaker sections of the Andronis fleet. This time the missiles carried an upgrade, EMP warheads. The first few hits were enough to disable several of the smaller Andronis ships, sending them spiraling into chaos. Their systems went dark and panic began to ripple through the fleet. Report, Vorath barked. His command crew was in a frenzy, trying to regain control. What happened to our ships? What are they doing? The human ship. It's hacking into our systems, an officer stammered. We're under attack, another officer said. Our communications are down. We can't coordinate with the rest of the fleet. Lila's grin was visible even through the comms as she spoke. You may have your fleet, Andronis, but you don't have our resolve. As the chaos unfolded across the Andronis fleet, Captain Chase knew that this moment could make or break them. The horizon was small, but it was designed for moments like this. It could strike fast and hard, disappear just as quickly, and strike again where the Andronis least expected it. Commander Connors looked over the tactical readouts. They're disorganized, Captain. We can pick them apart one by one. Lila nodded. That's exactly what we'll do. The crew worked together like a well-oiled machine. As the horizon reappeared from the darkness once more, it released another round of EMP missiles, this time targeting the larger Andronis ships. The fleet was beginning to fracture under the relentless assault. The Andronis couldn't keep up. Their shields were falling, their ships disabled one by one. The Andronis were losing. And the humans, humanity, was starting to prove that they weren't the weaklings everyone had thought they were. But even in the midst of the chaos, Captain Chase knew this battle was just the beginning. The Andronis were angry now, and they would come at them with everything they had. But for now, the message had been sent. As the Horizon continued its relentless assault, Vorath's rage grew. "This is not over," he muttered. "We will destroy them." But inside the Andronis fleet, something else was happening. The seeds of doubt were being sown. The human ship was showing them that strength wasn't always about numbers. Sometimes it was about ingenuity, and that was something the Andronis had never considered. The battle was far from over. But now humanity had the upper hand, and Captain Lila Chase knew they wouldn't stop until they had won. The Andronis fleet was in disarray. Ships that had once sailed through the galaxy with confidence were now floundering, their once perfect formations broken. The Horizon had struck with precision and speed, leaving the Andronis commanders scrambling to regain control. Captain Lila Chase and her crew had made their point. They were not a fleet to be underestimated. But the battle was far from won. Admiral Vorath stood on the bridge of the Talon's Fury, fists clenched tightly, his teeth gritting in frustration. His fleet had suffered unexpected losses, and their advanced systems were no match for the quick, unpredictable tactics the humans were using. It was maddening. How could a single human ship do so much damage to an entire fleet? "Re-establish communications with all units," Vorath barked. "We need to organize a counterattack now." One of his officers, an alien with glowing blue skin, turned to him with urgency. "Admiral, we've lost contact with several ships. The EMP attacks have fried our systems. We're operating in the dark." "We don't need our systems," Vorath growled. "We need to crush them." Full offensive. Prepare to target the Horizon directly. Meanwhile, on the Horizon, Captain Lila Chase watched her display as the Andronis fleet regrouped. The tension on the bridge was palpable, but there was no fear in the captain's eyes. The Andronis were rearming, reorganizing, and preparing to attack again, but Lila was ready for them. "Get ready for the next phase," Lila said, her voice steady as ever. "They're not going to stop, but neither are we." Commander Connors was at the tactical station, eyes scanning the readouts. "They're pulling together their forces. It looks like they're preparing to concentrate their fire on us, Captain." "We knew this was coming," Lila replied. "We've got one shot to finish this, but we need to keep them off balance." She turned to her crew, the same crew that had stood by her side through this whole ordeal. They had worked tirelessly to keep the Horizon in one piece, even with the odds stacked against them. Now it was time to make their move. "Everyone, prepare to launch all remaining EMP missiles," Lila ordered. "We can't afford to hold back now." The Andronis were angry, and their response would be swift and brutal. As the Horizon moved through the darkness of space, the Andronis fleet launched a full assault, their massive ships closing in on their target. The weapon systems of the Talon's Fury came online, ready to fire. The Andronis were not about to let one human ship continue its rampage through their ranks. They had no choice but to fight back with everything they had. But what the Andronis didn't know was that the Horizon was prepared. Lila's voice echoed through the comms once again. "Deploy the cloaking system. Let's take them by surprise." The Horizon vanished into the darkness once more, becoming completely invisible to the Andronis' sensors. But unlike before, they weren't hiding. They were hunting. Admiral Vorath's teeth clenched as his officers reported the sudden disappearance of the Horizon from their sensors. He knew it was only a matter of time before the human ship made its next move, and it would strike again with deadly force. "Deploy the fleet in a defensive formation," he ordered. "We'll flush them out. No more games. We destroy them now." But Lila was already 3 steps ahead. The Horizon reappeared out of nowhere, just as the Andronis were repositioning, firing a second wave of EMP missiles. This time, the missiles hit their targets with deadly accuracy, taking out the power systems of several more Andronis ships. The damage was catastrophic, causing the ships to fall into disarray. The Andronis commanders were left shouting orders to restore control, but it was too late. The Horizon had already slipped back into the shadows, like a phantom leaving chaos in its wake. "Admiral, they've disabled the shields on 3 of our largest ships," an officer reported, his voice filled with shock. "Our fleet is falling apart." "Impossible," Vorath muttered. He had been confident, so sure of his fleet's superiority. But now his pride was at stake, and his fleet was crumbling before his eyes. On the Horizon, Captain Chase felt the rush of victory, but she knew it wouldn't last long. The Andronis were regrouping quickly, and this time they were coming for her with everything they had. "We need to finish this," she said, turning to Connors. "If we don't take them out now, they'll overwhelm us with their numbers." Commander Connors nodded grimly. I agree, Captain. They're sending in their biggest ships and they're about to surround us. Lila was silent for a moment, considering the situation. The Horizon had taken down several of their ships, but the Andrones were relentless. If they wanted to win, they needed a decisive strike. Prepare the pulse fission cannon, Lila ordered. We'll hit them hard. Take out their biggest ships first. The pulse fission cannon was a secret weapon, a human-made marvel of technology that could obliterate even the most advanced shields in the galaxy. The weapon was still experimental, but Lila knew that now was the time to use it. Target the flagship, the Talon's Fury, Lila said, her voice cold and determined. Give them a taste of what we're capable of. Admiral Vorath stood in disbelief as his largest ships were disabled one by one. The Andrones had never been put on the defensive like this before. His fleet was falling apart and the human ship was only growing stronger. Why won't they stop? Vorath muttered under his breath. He turned to his officers, anger flashing in his eyes. Re-establish our communication channels with the rest of the fleet. We need more support. We're losing control, but it was too late. As Vorath looked up, his eyes widened in shock as the Horizon reappeared from the shadows, charging directly toward his flagship. The Talon's Fury was a massive ship, bristling with weapons, but it was no match for the Horizon's surprise attack. Before the Andrones could react, the pulse fission cannon fired. The blast was so powerful that it lit up the dark expanse of space. The Talon's Fury's shields flickered and collapsed instantly under the sheer force of the blast. The ship's hull cracked open, its systems failing as the ship was torn apart. In a matter of moments, one of the most powerful ships in the Andrones fleet was destroyed. The shockwave rippled through the fleet, causing more chaos. The Andrones fleet, once so confident and unstoppable, was now in disarray. Their largest ship had been destroyed and their morale had taken a crushing blow. The Horizon was not just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. Lila's heart pounded as she watched the destruction unfold on her screen. The Talon's Fury was gone, and with it, the backbone of the Andrones fleet. The battle was shifting in their favor. Captain, we've taken down their flagship, Commander Connors said, his voice filled with disbelief. It's over. Lila didn't let her guard down. It's not over yet. They still have plenty of ships left, and they're angry. But the Andrones were not regrouping as quickly now. Their morale was shattered, their fleet divided. The Horizon had achieved the impossible. It had turned the tide of the battle and sent a clear message to the Andrones. Humanity would not be easily defeated. Lila turned to her crew, their faces filled with hope. This is our chance, she said. Let's finish it. And with that, the Horizon prepared for the final strike. The Andrones might have been powerful, but humanity was stronger than they had ever imagined. The aftermath of the Talon's Fury's destruction rippled through the Andrones fleet like a shockwave. The once feared flagship was gone, shattered into pieces by the pulse fission cannon. Captain Lila Chase and her crew had struck at the heart of the Andrones, and for the first time, the vast fleet was scrambling to recover. The Horizon had achieved something that no one, especially the Andrones, could have anticipated. The human ship had taken down their largest warship, and with it their sense of invincibility. But Lila knew that even with their flagship destroyed, the battle wasn't over. The Andrones weren't the type to back down. They were dangerous, ruthless, and they still had plenty of firepower left. Captain, they're reassembling, Commander Connors said, his voice calm but tinged with concern. The remaining Andrones ships are starting to form a defensive perimeter. They're preparing to counterattack. Lila didn't flinch. She had expected this. The Andrones were proud, and they weren't going to let one ship, especially a human one, bring them to their knees. Don't let them regroup, Lila ordered. We can't let them recover from this. The Horizon's crew had been through a lot. They had faced overwhelming odds, and they had proven time and time again that they could adapt and fight back. The human ship was outmatched in terms of size and sheer firepower, but it wasn't outclassed in tactics. Humans had a way of finding ways to win when no one else thought it was possible, and Captain Chase was about to show the Andrones exactly what that meant. Admiral Vorath stood at the center of the bridge of his second flagship, the Onyx's Wrath, his face as cold as ever. The destruction of the Talon's Fury was a blow to his pride, but it was also a tactical mistake. He had underestimated the human ship, and now he was going to make sure that mistake wouldn't happen again. Admiral, one of his officers spoke up, we've lost control of the outer fleet. The human ship is picking us off one by one. We need to do something drastic. Vorath's eyes flickered with rage. He could feel his grip on the situation slipping. But he wasn't going to lose to a human ship. Not after all he had built. Prepare the Wrath's weapons, he said coldly. It's time to show them the true power of the Andrones. Back on the horizon, the crew could feel the intensity of the battle building. The Andrones weren't finished, they were getting angry. They had regrouped and now they were preparing for an all-out assault. Lila could sense it in the way the Wrath moved, the way the Andrones coordinated their forces. They were about to launch a full offensive and the horizon would be their primary target. We need to take out their command ships first, Lila said. We can't let them organize again. Once we take down their leadership, their forces will fall apart. Agreed, Captain, Commander Connors replied, his eyes scanning the tactical display. The Wrath is their most formidable ship now. If we can disable it, the rest of their fleet will lose coordination. Lila's eyes narrowed. The Wrath was formidable, but it had weaknesses. No ship, no matter how powerful, was invulnerable. The horizon had already proved that. And now it was time to press the advantage. Ready the cloaking device. Get us close to the Wrath without them detecting us, Lila ordered. We'll strike when they least expect it. Admiral Vorath's officers were tense as they watched the horizon's movements. They knew the human ship had only one advantage left, its speed and stealth. They had already lost one flagship. Vorath would not allow them to take another. He was determined to make sure the horizon would never leave this battle alive. They're coming in, one of Vorath's officers said, pointing to the tactical display. They're getting too close, Vorath turned sharply. Activate our weapons now! But it was already too late. The horizon had already slipped into the shadows, cloaked, and appeared right in front of the Wrath's bridge. Lila's voice rang out with calm authority. Now, in an instant, the horizon fired a concentrated EMP blast at the Wrath, targeting its communication and navigation systems. The blast hit with devastating force, and the Wrath shuddered. Its shields flickered and fell. The command ship systems went into chaos, with lights flashing and alarms blaring across the bridge. Admiral, we've lost control, an officer shouted, panic creeping into his voice. We're blind! We can't coordinate with the rest of the fleet. Admiral Vorath's face turned pale with fury. This is impossible, he muttered. They can't be doing this to us. The Wrath was the last hope for the Andrones. Without it, the entire fleet was vulnerable, and Lila knew this was the moment. She could sense the panic starting to spread among the Andrones, their once cohesive force now broken apart. Back on the horizon, Lila didn't wait to celebrate. There was no time. The Andrones were scrambling, but they weren't beaten yet. She glanced at her crew, her expression determined. We need to finish this, she said. One more strike. We're taking out their last command ship, Captain, Commander Connors said, his voice tight with urgency. We're surrounded. The Andrones are closing in. We can't keep dodging them forever. Lila didn't hesitate. She turned to the communications officer. Open a channel to the entire fleet. Channel open, the officer replied. Lila took a deep breath before speaking. To all human ships in the area, this is Captain Lila Chase of the Horizon. The Andrones are on the brink of collapse. We need every ship in the area to join us in the final push. Together we can end this. Her words rang through the comms, a call to arms that was heard far and wide. The Andrones had no idea that they were about to face an united front of humans. The battle would be won not just by the Horizon alone, but by every human ship that had been silently waiting in the wings, ready to strike when called upon. The Andrones, once so sure of their power, were about to face something they hadn't anticipated. The full might of a united human force. They had underestimated the humans before. Now they would pay the price. Admiral Vorath's face turned ashen as the Wrath systems continued to fail. He could hear the panic in his officers' voices as they scrambled to fix what had been broken. But it was too late. The horizon was already slipping away, reappearing behind his crippled flagship, and the human fleet was closing in. Vorath clenched his fists in frustration. They're not just surviving, they're winning. This is impossible. But it wasn't impossible. It was inevitable. The Andrones had become too arrogant, and now the humans were showing them just how wrong they were. As the horizon moved in for the final strike, Captain Lila Chase knew this battle wasn't just about defeating the Andrones. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity had arrived, and they were not to be taken lightly. And when the final blow was struck, The Andrones would know that they had underestimated the wrong species. The Andrones fleet was on the brink of collapse. The once mighty empire, known throughout the galaxy for its strength and unyielding dominance, had been thrown into chaos. Their flagship, the Talon's Fury, was destroyed. Their second-in-command ship, the Wrath, was crippled and losing control. The rest of their fleet was in disarray, disoriented by the relentless and unexpected attacks from the human ship, the Horizon. Captain Lila Chase stood on the bridge of the Horizon, watching the battle unfold. She could feel the weight of the moment. This was it, the final strike that would either end the war or lead to humanity's downfall. The Andrones were still dangerous. Even now they were regrouping, trying to find a way to retaliate. "They're closing in," Commander Connors reported, his voice steady despite the urgency in the air. "But they're disorganized. It's now or never." Lila's eyes narrowed as she stared at the holographic display of the Andrones fleet. The Horizon had done its part, but the battle was far from over. The Andrones were scrambling, sending what was left of their forces to converge on the Horizon, hoping to strike back. Their remaining ships were large and heavily armed, but their coordination was in ruins. The Horizon had thrown them off balance, and it wasn't about to let them regroup. "We can't let them have any more time to recover," Lila said, her voice calm but firm. "Prepare for the final assault. All weapons ready." The Horizon had already done more than anyone expected. It had taken down the Andrones flagship, crippled their command ship, and thrown the rest of their fleet into confusion. But Lila knew that it wasn't enough yet. The Andrones weren't going to surrender without a fight. They still had firepower, and they still had a desire for revenge. But humanity's will was stronger. The crew worked quickly, each member focused on their task. The hum of the ship's engines, the rapid blinking of lights, the sound of their fingers tapping furiously at controls. Every action was deliberate, every motion purposeful. There was no time to waste. This was humanity's moment to prove that they could not only survive, but thrive in the face of overwhelming odds. "Captain, we've received a transmission," Ensign Torres said from the communications station. Lila turned to face him, her brow furrowing. "From who?" "Admiral Vorath," Torres replied. "He wants to speak directly to you." Lila raised an eyebrow. The Andrones were desperate. They knew they were losing, and now they wanted to parley. But she wasn't about to show them mercy, not after everything they had done. "Put him through," she ordered. The screen flickered to life, and there was Admiral Vorath, standing in front of a backdrop of chaos. His face was twisted with anger, but there was a hint of fear in his eyes. "Captain Chase," Vorath's voice was cold and commanding, "you've caused irreparable damage to my fleet, and for that you will pay. But know this, your victory here will not go unchallenged. We will rebuild. We will come for you again." Lila's gaze remained steady, her voice unwavering. "You've already lost, Vorath. The Andrones fleet is in ruins. Your empire is crumbling. It's over." Vorath's eyes flashed with fury, but he did not respond. Instead, he turned and walked off the screen, his transmission cut short. Lila watched the screen for a moment, her mind racing. She knew the Andrones wouldn't give up easily, but their defeat was inevitable. They had underestimated humanity, and now it was too late for them to recover. "Admiral Vorath can try all he wants," Lila muttered under her breath. "But this ends today." The Horizon's crew could feel the tension building. The final battle was about to begin. The Andrones were launching their last-ditch effort to stop the human ship. But it was clear that they were a shadow of the formidable force they once were. The Horizon was ready. "Captain, they're sending everything they've got," Connors said, his eyes focused on the tactical display. "All their remaining ships are converging on us." Lila nodded. This would be the most dangerous part of the battle. The Andrones were desperate. But the Horizon was faster, more agile, and more unpredictable. Lila had seen the human spirit in action. Her crew had shown what they were capable of time and time again. And now it was time to finish it. "Deploy the cloaking system," Lila ordered. "Get us into position." The Horizon flickered and vanished into the dark void of space, becoming nearly invisible to the Andrones fleet. The Andrones ships, massive and lumbering, were closing in, their weapons charged and ready. They believed they had the upper hand. But Lila knew the truth. They didn't stand a chance. The Horizon reappeared, cloaking deactivated, and fired a barrage of missiles, each one targeting the most vulnerable parts of the Andrones ships. The missiles exploded with precision, taking down shields and disabling key systems. The Androni's fleet began to break apart under the onslaught. Direct hits, Connors called out, his voice full of excitement. Their shields are going down. We've got them. Lila didn't let up. She knew that the battle was far from over, but she could feel the momentum shifting in their favor. The Andronis were in disarray, their once impressive fleet now fragmented and vulnerable. The horizon danced around them, striking with deadly accuracy, disappearing just as quickly as it appeared. They're falling back, Connors reported. The Androni's fleet is in retreat. We've broken their formation. Lila didn't hesitate. Push forward. We finish this now. Admiral Vorath's hands clenched into fists as he watched his fleet fall apart. His ships were being picked off one by one, their once formidable power now useless against the relentless attacks from the horizon. His pride was shattered. He had underestimated humanity, and now his empire would pay the price. Retreat, Vorath shouted, but the words came too late. His fleet was already broken, and there was no escape. The Andronis were defeated. As the last of the Andronis ships fell, Vorath stood alone on the bridge of his flagship, the Onyx's Wrath. The crew had abandoned him. His empire was crumbling, and he knew that his time had come. His gaze lingered on the horizon as it made its final pass, its weapons deactivated, signaling that the battle was over. On the horizon, Captain Lila Chase stood tall, her face expressionless as she watched the last of the Androni's fleet retreat into the darkness. The battle was won. The galaxy had just witnessed a new power rise from the shadows, but Lila knew this was only the beginning. The Andronis were defeated, but the universe was vast, and there would always be new challenges ahead. Captain, the battle is over, Commander Connors said, his voice filled with relief. We did it. We beat them. Lila nodded, but her thoughts were already turning to the future. This victory isn't just about defeating the Andronis. It's about what we've shown the galaxy. Humanity is here to stay. The crew of the Horizon had accomplished the impossible. They had taken down the Andronis, defeated a much larger and more powerful foe, and proven that humanity had a place among the stars. They had shown that no matter how small or insignificant you seemed, you could rise to the challenge and win. As the Horizon slowly turned back toward Earth, the crew gathered in the common area, knowing that this was only the beginning of their journey. The galaxy was vast, and humanity was now part of it. Captain Lila Chase looked out into the vast expanse of space, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. They had done it. Humanity had proven itself, and the universe would never forget.